Hi, and welcome back to Food Farms and Chefs. And I am very happy to introduce all of our listeners to Alex Hardy and Tara Hardy, Buzan-Hardy. They are the owners at the Table BYOB.
Yes.
Welcome to Food Farms and Chefs.
We almost made it. We almost made it through that start. It's all good.
Thank you.
We almost did.
You
So, for our listeners out there who are not familiar with some of the things that your BYOB does, and actually, let me rephrase that. You're not necessarily BYOB. You do have some limited availability, but for your menu purposes, I mean, you have a menu that is, right from the notebooks of Ferran Adria and El Bulli, and you're playing with things that a lot of chefs in the city are not really well adept at yet, and you're creating meals for people that really focus about flavor, seasonal ingredients, and things like that. How did the two of you get into molecular gastronomy? Obviously sous vide, which a lot of caterers use today, but spherification and working with compression and so many other scientific techniques that are being used in the kitchen today.
Oh God. First off, you're clearly reading our notebook. I don't know. The first name you pulled out there, I was like, oh God, he knows way too much.
We have walls of all their
Yeah,
cookbooks that we sort of try to get inspiration from, but Alex's background is a little bit more or much more technical than mine. So you can explain.
I would just the thing about food for us, I think, is you have to remember where you are. You have to remember what you're doing, and you have your causes of why you're doing it. And then you think, something as simple as meat and potatoes. This is Pennsylvania. It's a Quaker state, right? So how do you take meat and potatoes, still have it meat and potatoes, but make it different, make it unique, make it special. So I don't know.
Well, so and I apologize because I have not been to your establishment yet, and today was a motivation doing a little bit of research to get me there. My background is I have a background in science, but I then became a chef, so this just appealed to me so much. But what you're talking about and what you're doing there is really the essence of teaching people flavor. It's not, let's add a little bit of salt, let's add a Mediterranean seasoning blend. You're taking foods and bringing them down to their essence and captivating that. And as simple as, I saw your Thanksgiving menu for your takeout things. So, to be doing, a simple truffled mashed potato, but doing that correctly, and to be doing a wild mushroom gravy, in a state that's known for, our mushrooms and our wild mushrooms, you're really touching on flavor. So a little bit about, I mean, obviously, maybe it goes back to your culinary roots or your culinary background, but, what was your early inspiration to you to really seek the path that was not utilized as much?
Gotcha.
I mean, I grew up with a family that was this very food focused and food driven. My grandfather was a butcher in South Philly. So like having family meals every night was a big part. I was lucky enough to travel a lot with my family. So I was able to experience different food from all over the world. But my parents would never be like, okay, you have to have the kids meal. Like I would always have to order off the adult menu and, try everything. I've always tried everything that was presented in front of me. And I think that sort of has been a way that I take food and look at food as we're cooking now.
I gotta live up to that. Me personally, I studied under the right way of in fine dining, as they say, of you start as a dishwasher, and work your way up, and then you go to line cook, and then sous chef, and then so on and so forth. For me, it was all about the sheer tenacity of watching the cooks work the line, and it was just something that I was in awe of. It was beautiful. It was a magical. It was a dance. It was something about the responses, the yes chef, we chef. It was the speed at which and the technicality that my I would like to say my mentors had shown me, that that pseudo concept from the bear when they sit there and say every second counts, it's true.
And yes, we love that movie.
Yeah.
That show. Everyone always
Yes.
asks us
Yeah,
that
yeah.
when they come in.
Yeah, and it's like but doing, I wanted to learn. I was eager. I was usually, I was always the first person there, always the last one to leave with the chef, and always wanted to be like, to try something new, and to go home and be like, Mom, can we go to the store real fast and get this, because I really want to try this. And then I got intrigued under people like, Thomas Keller is one of my, he is my idol, if you will. And in seeing some of the stuff that he was doing, the Ferranadria and stuff, like it was different, but it was like there was some sexiness to it, some value to it, some like, oh my God, like we're taking this over the top. Let's just, if we're gonna have these people have a meal with us, let's just make them feel like they're blown away, and yeah.
I have to tell the two of you, this conversation right now is actually getting a little bit emotional for me. In the fact that this week, if you're not aware, in the city of Philadelphia, we're celebrating the passing or memorializing one of the great Philadelphia culinarians and instructors, a gentleman by the name of Manfred Bath, who just epitomized everything you just talked about.
Yeah.
And when you spoke about Thomas Keller, people often ask me what the best item I ever had in my entire life was. And then immediately I go back to Thomas Keller having a consomme, a vegetable consomme that he did, that just as it went into, it was a, gelatin that went into a 450, 500 degree bowl and began to, liquefy. And it just was like eating the garden. The flavors were so rich in that. So as you talk, obviously it's inspiring, because what you're talking about is food in its essence, and food is a form of, language and love. And growing up in South Philadelphia for you, Tara, is just, that family meal, that seeing food processed and where it comes from and the roots, it's such a wonderful thing. And obviously, your restaurant carries that out today, in what you do. One of the things I saw, you undertake a lot out of your restaurant there on the main line. I mean, you have an incredible 6-course chef's tasting menu. You have a phenomenal raw bar menu, and you also do a la carte. I mean, did you set out to take on something that ambitious all at once, or has it just grown into that?
What did we do? We went from like, oh my God, for years it was tasting menu only, then it was a la carte,
Yeah.
and then it was like,
So we just moved a couple months ago, so we were able to expand. And then our dream, we always go up to Martha's Vineyard every summer. So like while we were designing this restaurant, we wanted to have like an ode to where we go every summer. So that was sort of how the raw bar was inspired. We love oysters and everything seafood. And we wanted our customers, we wanted to give that to our customers too. So that's sort of how
yeah, I
that
think
was.
it's unique. It's not
that
even just
evolved.
like, yeah, it's not, it was the thought process of when we went up to the vineyard, but it was also like, when we wanted to build this, it was kind of a take on so many different aspects and to be able to combine those into one, but in the ability to have that space that we have in the kitchen and to have a walk-in. And I mean, for
7 years.
7 years, we were working out of a 24 seat restaurant that didn't have a walk-in, that only had 2 reach-ins. It was kind of a, everything we were inherited, stuff like that. And to make a success out of that was, for me, was, something incredible. But I wanted, me personally, I wanted to be able to take a next step, an evolutionary balance of our tasting menu. That's one of the big ones that I really heavily focus on. Tara heavily focuses on the a la carte, which is kind of, I think, I've always been saying it, and everybody shuts me down. They're like, a la carte is more comfort, which is more Tara style, and the tasting menu is more fine dining, which is my style. And they're like, dude, none of your food is comfort at all. It's beautiful. It's presented beautifully. It's, so I get shut down on it a lot real fast. But it is a lot, but it's definitely a lot to take in. But it's, when you're out there and you're working on the floor, or if you're just taking a walk and seeing all your customers, and whether they're eating, the langoustine toast, which is like a derivative off of Jean-Georges toast. And then you see somebody who's having a plate of oysters, and then the other person who's having a mushroom toast. The feeling is still the same. That feeling of love, that feeling of like, it's so quiet, and it's so like, you almost feel it. You feel the vibe, if you will. Why am I saying vibe a lot?
No.
I'm saying a lot.
You're gonna say feel the love.
Feeling the love, like it's just something that you may internally feel like, oh my God, okay, this is a lot of stuff. This is too much. How do we prep this? How do we do this? But when you're sitting there and it's 7 o'clock and the dining room is empty, because it's not empty, but like empty with sound, because people are just eating and they're just laughing and loving everything. It's like, that's why we do it.
Yeah.
That's why that alone right there.
I spent many years in a classroom teaching young chefs, and I would always speak to them early on about the power of being a chef. And I would speak to that when you walk through your dining room at the end of the night and people are talking about how great the food is and thanking you for the meal and thanking you for the feeling they have, and then paying that bill and paying you for your services, which is empowering in its own sort. But that silence where there's no conversation, there's just that enjoyment, there's that solitude where the people are just, totally engrossed in what you serve. That is, a power that is just beyond anything if you're not a chef. I guess, if you're an artist and you see people lost in your art, it's the same thing. And I really appreciate you sharing that the way you did moments ago, because it's so true.
Well, this 100% is the moment you walk in the door to a restaurant is the moment you start telling a story from A to Z, all the way to the point where you leave. And that's important. And that's hospitality, especially ever since COVID. I mean, hospitality's had to go through the roof, and we've had to make sure that it's like, you're not coming into a restaurant, you're coming into our house, you're coming into our home. If I know you, I've got a lot of customers, they always say, they'll look at me and they'll be like, oh, who's this guy's on the floor tonight? They get to know you, and they love, and I love that. I love it. It's just, she loves it. She loves that the cooking aspect of how many people can we do without
Sacrificing anything.
Yeah, sacrificing anything. I couldn't say the word because I was told I had to put tape on my mouth. But sacrificing, not bastardizing. Damn it. Came out. That's why, it stems back to your original question of why is it, what do we do? It's different. Why are we different? Because every place, no matter what, is different. You have to be different, especially if you want to succeed, especially if you want to do, be known, if you will, and get awards and this, that, and there's a great line from Daniel Boulud that says every 10 years, a restaurant must evolve. And it's important because, the food has to change a little bit. We change the food. We change the food because we get
bored.
We'll get bored.
I
It's
get
not
bored.
because of seasonality. It's because we're bored.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, I've cooked this so many times. Like,
Yeah.
I'm over it. I think it's cool. I think it's something our customers definitely love.
Well, listening to the two of you speak, you've certainly been inspired and, mentored in some ways by some of the great culinary leaders and chefs, throughout the last 20 years. And it's really wonderful to see what you're putting forth, honoring those traditions and that hard work and that dedication. And that's, something so important. And I guess what I keep going back to with the two of you is you didn't take the easy route. A lot of people can hire a marketing company and we can design a menu that is kind of a little different and it has a little gimmick or has this and that. You really are putting in, what do they say? The true gastronomy is coming into an empty kitchen every day and starting fresh.
Mhm.
And you're doing that in your establishment. You're starting with your stocks and you're right at the basic, in what's taught in culinary school, and you're adhering to that and not cheating and not taking, the road, not taking the easy way out.
Shortcuts.
So
Thank you.
So one of the other things that I noticed you're doing is you're taking your menu and you're also doing some catering with it now as well. What you're doing is the flavors and all, have to be difficult to take out to a different location. How's that being received? And obviously, what difficulties have you found in doing that?
I love catering. I started my career basically as a private chef and delivering meals to people's homes. And through this restaurant, my catering, it's evolved, and we do a lot of private parties at the restaurant. And then, as you said, off-site. So one of the things I love about catering is it's always different, and you're walking into somebody's home and you got to figure it out. Maybe one of their burners doesn't work. Maybe they have a tiny little kitchen, and I still have to execute a 6-course tasting menu for 20 people. So I have a group, like a team that I've worked with for probably, 10, 12 years. They've worked with me. So we just we don't even have to talk about it. We just know exactly what the other person's going to do.
She doesn't send me on it.
I don't send Alex.
I'm not allowed to
go. So I sort of head up the catering department.
Yeah.
Team of one.
Oh, it's amazing. Every single time somebody calls and they're like, "Yeah, can I get a reservation?" I say, "Yeah, I can do that for you." Or, "Can you tell me about the menu?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then they're like, "Can you tell me about catering?" I'm like, "Yes, please hold."
I love that. Okay. I apologize because I took up way too much of your time, and I want to carry this conversation on for hours. Because just everything you have inspired within me again, and it's just wonderful to talk about. But can you tell our listeners where they can find you out there on the main line, what your social media is, and how to get in and try the incredible things that you're doing?
So our website is www.atthetablebyob.com. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, just look up At The Table BYOB. Our new restaurant is right on 118 West Lancaster Avenue, across from the Fine Wine and Spirits. Reservations wise, it's the honest truth is we do book up. We, especially Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays.
Mhm.
Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, I actually stop 7 o'clock reservations. I know you probably know this financially, but it's just like, if you have a 7 o'clock reservation, I can't have a 6:30 and an 8 o'clock.
Right.
So it's like, I have to financially be able to be okay and make sure everything's good so that we can still do the wonderful stuff that we do.
So also during the week, Tuesday through Thursdays, we're doing like happy hour.
Happy hour.
Yep, featuring good stuff from our oyster bar. We've been doing fried oysters, lobster sliders.
Those are the best
Great
oysters
stuff.
ever.
They are.
Yeah, seriously.
So that changes every couple of weeks, the happy hour menu. So that's always fun to come in
And we did do a merge with Imprint Brewing. We are waiting for the liquor license to go through. Thank you, PLCB. But yeah, once that goes through, then we're going to be offering cocktails. It's a Pennsylvania distillery license. So 6 cocktails plus the ability to make, somebody, if you walked in and you said, hey, I just want a, dirty martini. Yeah, well, there you go. Absolutely.
but still BYOB.
But yeah, but still bring your, and
I have to interrupt only because we do have to wrap, but thank you so much for joining us on Food
Like,
Farms and
I don't
Chefs.
mean
We will continue this
And then-
conversation on another episode.
And we can
Thank
bring you back on for another episode. Yes.
there we go.
All right.
Come on out to see us.
All
Oh,
right.
you could bet on it.
Nice.
Perfect.
All right. And thank you. And we will be right back after this short break. Hi, and welcome back to Food Farms and Chefs. And I'm very happy to introduce you to the co-owner of Fringe Bar, which is located in Philadelphia, Kenny, Chef Kenny. Welcome to Food Farms and Chefs.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So, I know prior to like hopping on, you were like, don't call me Chef Kenny. And I was like, oh, I'm going to call you Chef Kenny. So that's why I did that. But, let our listeners know, like, how did you get into the business? Because I know that you've worked very closely with Peter Woosley, who is, the owner of Le Bistro La Manette and, several other restaurants, but you've worked with him and now you co-own things with him. So how did you get into the hospitality and restaurant industry?
Yeah, I took a very circuitous route. I always loved food growing up. I get my love of food from my family, particularly my love of cooking from my mother. She always was there ready to make a really delicious meal. And whenever I showed interest, even at a young age, like 8 or 9, she would always show me what she was doing, and that really got me going. In high school, I worked at McDonald's, which I always tell people is like my introduction and a lot of people's introduction to cooking, because it's a readily available job, but teaches you a lot of things about, sort of the nuts and bolts of cooking, like making sure things are the right temperature and making sure you check things to make sure they're fresh once you've cooked them, right? So, and then out of high school, I got into a very good 4-year university and went there. The whole time I was there, I was always dabbling into cooking. So I worked at a sushi restaurant, I worked at a creperie, and I just kind of caught the bug and took it from there.
It's wonderful to have that diverse background. So many times people say, oh, well, you didn't make, a climb up the ladder. You kind of did a vertical going across, but you learn something from every one of those little establishments. And yes, you can learn, something from a McDonald's or, a Burger King. You learn systems, and all that stuff comes back into play. And, one of the things that I think, is so important, and you talk about there, is that toolbox that you took from everywhere you went.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of, talked about getting the bug, and loving and enjoying cooking and working in restaurants. But I started, once I graduated, I had student loans, right? So I thought to myself, well, am I going to be a, $8 an hour line cook? This is back when I graduated in, 2001. You can make $8 or $9 an hour as a line cook. Or am I going to go into something else? So I went into front of the house management, and I was a front of house manager for 10 years before I even started my like true culinary journey. And so when you talk about a toolbox, right? Like I got to see things in restaurants from all angles. I got to see sort of the operational stuff in the front, how to work with customers face to face. And then, when I eventually did go into the kitchen and started learning about food and cooking, I always had the mentality of guests first, because that's what you're taught in front of the house when you're a manager. So that well-rounded sort of toolbox, like you said, has kind of made me the restaurateur that I am today. I say restaurateur, I own one restaurant, but but it informs all aspects of what I do. And that's important because a restaurant isn't just the food you put out. It's the food you put out, the service, the attention to detail, but also building your employees, right? So there's a lot that goes into it. So
There is. And I want to just touch note on the fact that the Fringe Bar is like latched on or in the same building as Fringe Arts. And I'm wondering with, the art of, plating something that's not only just beautiful, but also tastes really good. Do you coincide with like your menu? Do you coincide it with whatever performance is going on?
yeah, so the Fringe Arts space is very big. And it's very complicated, right? So just to let the listeners know a little bit about us, right? We're on North Columbus Boulevard, 140 North Columbus Boulevard. We're right underneath the Ben Franklin Bridge. So when it comes to spaces with a great view, ours is bar none, one of the best in the city, especially from the ground level, right? You don't have to be at the top of one of the Comcast buildings to get the view here. You could be sitting in the patio and get the view. But there's a theater next door to us. And so we are a restaurant who serves a 120 seat inside space, a 200 to 300 seat outdoor space, and then when you add the theater to it, it's very complex. So occasionally we do small events that coincide food with what art is going on in the theater. But on the whole, what we try to do is provide an amenity to the theater space. So if you come for a show, you can get dinner after, dinner before, drinks after. And that to us is the key. If you go to any of and Philly is a city with great theaters, right? And you go to any of those theaters and you have concessions, you have some wine and beer, but you don't have the ability to have a full meal necessarily. You're usually doing like a pre-theater or somewhere close, right? Our guests here, when they say, oh man, I'm nervous about my meal being fast enough until the show starts, we tell them, you've got a 30-second walk to the theater and a 1-minute wait in line, right? So you can literally dine with us until, 7:55 if you're 8 o'clock showing, right? Which I think it makes us different from other theaters. But yeah, so we try to involve as a team, because we see Fringe Arts and Fringe Bar as a team, to bring art into what we do in the restaurant. And it is not always through food. Sometimes it's as an accompaniment. So we actually have a mini stage in the restaurant. And so we'll do things like live music performances there. So right now on Thursdays, we have like a small band day that happens almost every Thursday, where there's a small band live music there. It's a great way to sort of see up and coming bands in the area. Sometimes we do parties where there's DJs on that stage, but during certain parts of the year, we actually have entertainment that is in partnership with Fringe and the Fringe Arts Festival. So comedians there, drag shows, stuff of that nature. We have a cabaret series upcoming, which will have a food component as well, right? So you can kind of see how Fringe Bar is a space that has a little bit of something for everyone.
It really does. And I know that you also started or added on, I should say, Pump House Pizza.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. So, again, like I said, the space is so big and so diverse that there's really room for us to expand and grow using some of the footprint that we have. So, we actually have a pizza truck that is parked in the beer garden, which has a double deck oven that we do really delicious pizza out of. And it started up in late September, so there wasn't as much opportunity to service the beer garden, outside dining crowd as there would have been if it started in the summer. But when we get to next summer, well, next spring really, it'll be completely outdoors. So we have a beer garden that has 2 levels to it. The top level of the beer garden, or top and bottom is confusing. That's a me term. So there's a portion of the beer garden that's right in front of the restaurant. That portion we do sit down dining service for Fringe Bar. Now on the other part, it's got like a recycled gravel bed and wooden picnic tables, and that is what we consider sort of the Pump House Pizza area. So it's a completely outdoor pizzeria. People ask me what kind of style of pizza we do. I tell them we do Kenny style, right? And I like to explain it to people. I went to school in New Haven, and I'm from New York. So 2 very good pizza cultures. I like a thin, crispy pizza with what I call a firm undercarriage, and well cooked with well flavored dough. And so that's the type of pizza we do. We only do one size. We have about 50 of them available a day. And with some creative ingredients, like right now, the Pump House Pizza is Fresno chilies and Induja, spreadable chorizo. So it's really flavorful, really spicy. And we do everything by hand. So we don't purchase our dough. We make it in-house. We ferment it for 3 days before we serve it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's some of the best pizza in the city.
I was actually I'm glad that you said that, because I was gonna ask you. I know some Italian restaurants, some pizza places, like they'll like utilize old dough, like, and just continue, with that process, that fermentation.
Yeah. So we actually, part of the dough making in general, whether it's pizza dough or even something like I did at Bistro La Manette, which we make baguette every day, is putting a starter to your dough. Now there's a bunch of different starters, but basically any starter is just a pre-fermentation, right? So it includes yeast that you use either as the entire leavening process, so like sourdough, right?
Yeah.
Or as a flavoring component. And so typically taking old dough and putting it into new dough is for flavor, not for yeast.
Okay.
And so we do that, yes. So we make our dough on day 1, we serve it on day 3, we can serve it on day 4. Anything left over gets set aside and a small portion gets added to the fresh dough, and it helps to build the flavor characteristic.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at, because I'm like, I know that it kind of, it's almost like a signature for your pizza.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like our flavor of the pizza really has to do with the dough, and you can tell the difference between a dough that's on day 3 and day 1. Day 1 is very, very, very commercially bouncy, right? You can see it. It's very evenly hold throughout. Day 3 dough is kind of wild, right? It looks like very abnormally craggy with big holes, small holes. But yeah, it's about the flavor, right? Like anything else, time helps develop flavor, and the time on that dough helps to develop that flavor. So yeah.
That is very cool. And I know that we're covering a lot, and I know that my focus wanted to be on just Fringe Bar and whatnot, but I want to give a nod to the Morris.
Oh yeah, thanks for that one too. So that's a project I have no, I have a lot going on. That's a project I have in collaboration with a management group that owns the building. So it's their restaurant, and I have helped to guide the opening of it. The Morris is a neighborhood steakhouse. So what we do there is we provide some of the steakhouse classics. We dry age steaks in-house. We use certified Angus beef for our house steaks. We have a nice affordable steak at $33. The difference between our steaks and a normal steakhouse steaks is always comes with the sauce, always comes with the side. So there's the value there as well. And for me, dining is as much about experience as it is value. What separates you from every place else is what you bring to the table. And what part of what we bring to the table at the Morris is a great steakhouse experience with value for the dollar. So you get a little bit more than normal. But the space is amazing. There's a huge garden between the Morris House Hotel and the restaurant. So you can dine al fresco in the garden area. It's tented and heated. So if you want to sit outside and enjoy the space of the garden and the beauty, you can do that all season. So
That's always a bonus.
yeah.
And now I'm going to circle back really quick because I would love to bring you on again, just specifically to talk about the Morris, because I know that's a brand new restaurant and
Yeah.
new space.
And I think also the chef there, Grant, would be great too, because he worked with me at Bistro. He's a great asset to the team, and so we could tag team that together. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun, especially because I know that Gene's is not only a chef, but he's also somebody who enjoys food equally as much as I do. I've definitely eaten at Le Bistro La Minette. I keep saying that. The Bistro La Minette.
Bistro La Minette, yeah.
Yes. I keep putting a the in front of it for
Bistro.
some reason, but I've eaten there several times. I love it every single time that I go there. And I've passed by the Fringe Arts. I unfortunately have not eaten there, but I'm definitely tempted now.
We'll have to have you in.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if Gene's gone to Fringe Bar.
I have actually. It's funny when you were talking about the pizzas and things like that. One of my impression from being there was walking away saying somebody who understands flavor. Somebody who understands flavor, because people do not, we were just talking about this a few minutes ago about taking shortcuts and, those old world techniques of taking a little bit of old dough and throwing it in with the new dough. Because the old dough, while it may not have the structure anymore, it has the flavor and how that wonderful. And what I walked away with was somebody who understands flavor. And I'll go back to that every time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of view myself as a chef as, well, let me take this back. As a chef, I feel like lots of my culinary experiences are what make me cook the way I cook today, right? And so I like to make sure that I pay homage to that as much as possible, because I think food really is a personal reflection of yourself. And it is very easy, like you said, to take shortcuts, but not just that. You have a business to run as well, right? So you try to make decisions that will please people. And sometimes those decisions can get clouded and you don't always make the right ones. So the thing that I always fall back on is this food that I'm making, is the dish that I'm creating, is the ambiance that I'm trying to create, is it a reflection of what I want to give guests? And then you leave it up to the guests to receive it well. And you change things that maybe need changing because they don't work. But if you try to think of what a guest wants and then deliver that, you will miss the mark every time, because every person's different. People aren't a monolith. So you're much better off just trying to build your restaurant and your cuisine, put out food that you're proud of, that reflects you, that you have a connection to, because in that way, the cuisine will shine and then people will acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
And so, I have at times have learned the hard way that, maybe I'm trying to put the square peg into the round hole, right? And so I just, make my food reflections of who I am. I've got a very diverse background. I'm half black, half white. I'm Jewish, culturally, in not my upbringing, but my lineage. I learned how to cook from my mother, who was African American, but she went to college with a whole bunch of Italian people. So I grew up eating stuff like mac and cheese right next to lasagna. Right. And so the best way for me to pay homage to that is to have that reflected in my food. And I always do.
That is a wonderful. I would love to delve into that further the next time that you're on, but unfortunately we ran out of time. So
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
can you let our listeners know where to find Fringe Arts, Fringe Bar, and everything else?
Everything that I do, right? So we'll start with the Fringe Arts is fringearts.com. That's the building we're in. We're at 140 North Columbus Boulevard. That's where you can visit us. You can check us out online at fringebarphilly.com. And that's the same Instagram handle. So at fringebarphilly. If you're interested in the pizza, you can get us at pumphousepizza.com. And the Morris is themorrisphilly.com.
All right. Thank
All
you.
easy.
Thank you so much for joining us on Food Farms and Chefs, Chef Kenny.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
I appreciate
much,
you
Chef.
guys. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. And we will be right back after this short break. Hi, and welcome back to Food Farms and Chefs. And I am very happy to introduce all of you to Ben Beaver, who is the executive chef of Wild Rabbit Pies and Pites, Evergreen Brewing Company, and you also work on Evergreen Farms.
Yes.
So welcome to Food Farms and Chefs. That's a lot, but
Yeah. Happy to be here.
no problem. So as I was researching you, there's very little on your history. So I would love to even learn about how you got started, where you studied, and, anybody who may or may not have inspired you.
So I've been doing this about 20 years now. I'm 35, so I started pretty young. I actually grew up in a house that my mom was a pretty decent home cook. And then from there, I went to a vocational school for high school. So I didn't go to your average high school. Vocational, I don't feel is talked about enough. I started my 4-year high school career pretty much starting with food service. I really got a college education in high school. You learn all your basic knife skills, mother sauces, all that stuff. You literally learn in high school for free. So from there, I just got in with good chefs and worked with at good restaurants. And kind of moved my way up. I really didn't go the culinary degree route.
I mean, learning with hands-on experience, especially when you start. I have a friend who's a professional chef, and he's a celebrity chef at that. And he teaches high school students at a vocational school. And I've had him on several times before. It's integral. It's integral to learn that set of skills. I know, just from all of my chef friends, I'm self-taught on how to cook at home, but the person that's probably chomping at the bit right now is my co-host Gene, because he used to teach students, but he's also a chef. So I'm sure he has something to say in regards to that.
Well, you are absolutely right in the fact that nobody talks enough about vocational education. I spent 15 years teaching high school vocational education, culinary, pastry, front of the house, and it is not something that people, talk about enough. And I'm going to leave it very simply. When I spent a couple years in Philadelphia, I had kids graduating from high school going on to work in places like the Crystal Tea Room and the Union League and other places, making more money than their mom and dad were making. When you can do that and empower somebody to make a career, they don't necessarily have to go to school, but they were able to go into the workforce and be, with a skill set that they can earn a living the rest of their life and work themselves up the ladder. We don't need to talk any more about that, but you are 100% right, Chef.
And no
So,
debt.
huh? Oh, I'm so
And no
yeah,
debt.
yes,
Yeah.
and no debt. So, I'm gonna touch base on the fact that the Evergreen Grains Brewing Company actually bought their own farm, and I think that it's very, very interesting that, you know, you guys not only own that farm, it's privately run by you guys, and that's actually where you pull your ingredients from when you're creating your menu. Like, so
Yes.
when you're doing locally fresh, you really are doing doing it at a local, super local, micro local
Yes.
aspect.
Yeah, it's super local. It's probably maybe a 2 or 3 acre plot of land. You know, I think my growing area is, I think, 180 by 90 or 100 feet. So I can get a lot of produce. I mean, I think this past season, I'm still picking stuff now. But this past growing season, I think I had about 100 different varieties of things, between tomatoes to radish to lettuce to green beans, tomatoes, 10 different varieties of tomatoes, and, you know, anything that's basic produce we're growing ourselves.
And I mean, I'm sure Gene can also attest to this because he also gardens. I not to like continue to like you know, tap Gene in, but like he gardens as well. And I know that creating dishes from the most like fresh aspect
Yes.
changes the dynamics of the dish. Like, it changes how it tastes and how it comes together.
You know, one of the things that I tell everybody, if you really want to learn to cook with fresh ingredients, join a CSA where you go every week or every other week and you get ingredients you may not have ever worked with. You know, you may go, you know, at a particular point in time and get, you know, ramps, or you might get, you know, some turnips and some rutabagas or some red beets and things like that that you're not used to working with fresh. And you have no choice because this is what you have. And what a wonderful lesson in cooking that is, when you can make things with that and do that and every week, and you really learn to cook through the seasons.
That said, I'm gonna ask you, because since you didn't go through, you know, the culinary hospitality industry as far as in act like the CIA or anything like that, what is it like for you building upon your menu with the seasonality of the different produce that you're kind of gaining from farming?
Honestly, I think it's super easy. Um, I'm letting the ingredients do their job and highlighting the ingredients, not doing too much to them. You know, you taste one of my tomatoes at Evergreen Farms compared to a tomato you get at your grocery store, I guarantee you it's going to taste different. You know, I actually start planning menu items in January, February for like spring, summer, fall, because we get started so early with some things, get things germinated, stuff like that. That I actually already have plans for the majority of the stuff. Sometimes though, you do get an excess amount of produce with things, and then, you know, that's just going with the flow. And you know, we change our menu up weekly to monthly to whatever we need to do to just to utilize that product.
So when you're creating these menu items, do you have like a set items that stay on your menu all the time, and then you switch up different things, or do you switch the entirety of your menu up?
I do keep things that sell on. For example, like, you know, at the brewery at Evergreen, we do a Korean fried chicken. You know, I grew Napa cabbage this year just to do kimchi and do that dish. But now we still do it, even though I don't have Napa cabbage anymore to make kimchi. But there are some specialty things that we do just for summertime. We do a BBLT, which is like a BLT. We do our thick cut heirloom tomato, thick cut bacon, basil mayo, burrata on sourdough. So it's our take on a BLT we'll sell 80 to 100 of those a day. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, if you were closer, I 100% would be like, I'm driving over there now for that. So what are some of your other popular items? And do you pair that with the beers that are being created and cultivated with the same ingredients that you're using to
So
make
yeah, sorry. So yeah, we do we cook with a lot of the beers, and we pair some of the beers with the food. I would say some of the style that we stick with that sells well for that area. I do a lot of like Korean barbecue that goes well with like some of the lighter beers. Wintertime, fall time, we'll run a ramen where we'll make hand stretched ramen noodles without an alkaline noodle with our own dashi broth, soft egg. That sells really well, and that pairs well with a lot of variety of different beers, not just like one variety, like an IPA or something. That also goes with wintertime stouts, porters, darker beer, stuff like that. And I'm still a fan of pork belly, so I do a lot of pork belly, either a ramen. We have a pork belly grilled cheese on the menu. That sells very well. It's honestly one of the first sandwiches I put on like 4 years ago, and it's still kicking. So
I mean, I love pork belly, so I can understand why. And it
yeah.
kind of that salty, like heavy, like fat, like that kind of coincides with like drinking a beer and having that. It's just I feel like that's a good menu item to have and very
Definitely.
popular. So what like I love a good stout, and farmhouse ales and stuff like that are some of my favorites too. But when I cook, I love creating stuff with stouts. So what's your favorite thing to like make with a stout?
Right now we're doing a couple things. Right now we have a French dip on the menu. That we do a stout like au jus.
Mhm.
And that stout really comes through in the sandwich. So we get whole ribeyes in, and we're not smoking. Sometimes we smoke them. We'll change the menu up. But we roast them, we slice them, do a nice French dip. We do a stout au jus. And then I also have a stout gravy. We do kind of like my take on like a pot roast entree, but we use short rib that we're utilizing stout with.
I love the fact that you incorporate your beers that way into that. My current status, I operate one of many things that are within my building, but we have a brewery and a brewery menu, and beers become such an integral part of that cooking process. From a good beer cheese for the pub burger to incorporating a little bit into our onion soup broth. Just wonderful flavors come through and help you pair things, and as well as making suggestions on what beer is going to pair well with food. And so many people come in, and obviously when you have a microbrewery, people want to try a little bit of everything, but then they're like, okay, what's going to go well with my food? And being able to talk intelligently about that is such a wonderful thing.
So, with that said, what are some of the things that people can look forward to? Because I also know that you guys host a lot of events and whatnot. Do you have different special menus for the events that are popping up?
So yes, once December is pretty wild for us with holiday. We do catering, so we do a lot of holiday parties. We have banquet room. So once we get through that season, we will do beer dinners, and we'll pick themes, and we'll do it with the seasonal stouts and stuff that are brewing at the time. And that's where I can really get creative. And it's a brewery, so we do casual style food, but it's a good opportunity for me to do something a little classier, more upscale, something kind of fun and creative. So we do that towards like the slower time of the year, January, February, March. So that'll be posted once we start doing them in the new year. We'll have that posted on all of our social media and our website and all that stuff.
And I mean, given the farm and everything that you have your hands, delved into, I want to also tie into the fact that Wild Rabbit opened, and you're also the executive chef there as well.
Yes.
So, congratulations on being, expanding upon your history. But what was that like opening a restaurant, alongside of what you do?
It was pretty crazy. This was the second restaurant that got the opportunity to open. So I've had some experience with what to expect and things I learned from the previous restaurant I opened up. But it was pretty wild to maintain a very, very busy brewery and then also open up another restaurant. So it was fun. Honestly, it was a really good time. It's a wood-fired Neapolitan style pizza joint. So, we do a really nice crust, a good dough. It really it took me almost a year to really hammer down our dough and to where it should be, and to make excellent pizza. I mean, I think people overlook pizza and they think it's just dough and cheese and sauce. There's honestly a lot to it.
We literally just had a conversation with somebody before you hopped on about pizza dough in particular. So, I feel like every chef has their own version of like what they consider as a good, slice of pizza or a good pie. I personally like deep dish because it's like a sturdy pie, and thin crust, because obviously like you're getting like just that gooey cheese that's more prominent. So what is your style of pie?
That's a tough one. I mean, I really am on the Neapolitan style pizza kick right now. But I honestly would have to say probably just a New York style pizza would probably be my like go-to. This simple.
That's it, yeah. And I mean, I'm wondering now what Jean likes too. Oh, maybe we lost Jean. But but anyhow, with that said, like what are we looking forward to with Wild Rabbit and with Evergreen, and are you planting seeds moving forward?
So yeah, we are. I'm trying to get Evergreen Farms to be as year round as possible. Right now, come December, January, February, it's a little difficult to grow, just depending on like last season. We didn't have much snow and it wasn't very cold. So I'm working on getting a greenhouse and stuff like that so we can get some stuff year round. And then as far as Wild Rabbit and Evergreen go, we're just gonna keep creating new dishes, something that's different. I don't like to do the run of the mill plain stuff that other places do. I like for the guests to come in and get something that they can't do at home. And the fact that we can do it really well and execute it very well. I have a very good staff at both locations that honestly make that happen. You know what I mean? Without my staff, I would not be able to do half the stuff that I'm able to do. So without them, I'm nothing. But seasonal menus, we're going to become, we come out with new 2 or 3 menus per season. Just keep it changing.
And for our listeners out there that are looking to visit you, where can they find you guys online and in person?
So you can find us on the internet, evergreenbrewing.com, our Instagram, evergreenbrewing.com, Wild Rabbit, Pies and Pints. You can find me at Chef Ben Beaver on Instagram. And then we also have a Evergreen Farms Instagram to check out. And I always post when we're tilling and putting new fencing up. I do all that. It's not, I learned a lot the past 3 years that we've done it. Growing everything. I put fencing up. I'm catching groundhogs. It's a lot more than just putting a seed in and letting it grow for sure.
I'm sure it is. And you know what? I look forward to, watching you continue grow in your field. But I do want to thank you for joining us on Food Farms and Chefs.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate being here.
No problem. And tune in every single week as we have new episodes with new restaurateurs and chefs. And we love to have our listeners learn about all of you.